Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I thank the President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Abdullah Shahid, for putting the spotlight on tourism in the post-pandemic recovery discussion. COVID-19 pandemic had a devastating impact on the tourism industry. There were around 1 billion fewer international tourist arrivals, or 73% drop from the 2019 pre-pandemic levels. As a multi-sectoral industry, the spillover effect of the pandemic on tourism to many economies was really a big catastrophic. We saw this in many developing and small island countries. With micro, small, medium enterprises, the creative economy, and the informal sector supporting the tourism industry, the impact of the pandemic travel restrictions was direct and immediate to local communities' income and livelihood in developing countries. We saw this devastation in Indonesia, where more than 34 million people livelihood depend on tourism and creative economy sector. Mr. President, the pandemic highlighted the urgent need to transform the tourism industry. We need to reduce the vulnerability of the industry to shocks and prepare it for future pandemic. With the global tourism beginning to grow post the pandemic, the time is now to begin the transformations. While we see positive trend in the global travel and tourism with 130% growth in January 2022 compared to 2021, we, however, should not be complacent. It is critical we do not fall back to a business as usual approach or to a false sense of security. We should build back the tourism industry better, more sustainable, and more resilient. Developing a sustainable tourism sector must look beyond the issue of environment or environmental well-being. It must also elevate the dignity of local culture, community, and traditional knowledge, as well as creating a balance between mass tourism and quality tourism. In our experience, this will require the following interconnected elements. First, multi-stakeholders approach towards the development of sustainable tourism sector. In developing the sustainable tourism sector, we can't do it on our own. Both public and private sectors need to be involved and collaborate with each other, as well as with the local communities. Both private and public sectors need to focus on having the measurable goals and comparable metrics. These components are critical towards the long-term improvement and accountability of sustainable tourism. To better align efforts towards best sustainable tourism practices, it is also fundamental for public and private stakeholders to have a unified narrative on what constitutes as sustainable tourism and for them to have adequate access to accurate information. Today, we need to look also at the role of millennials and Gen Zs in sustainability, not only as tourists, but also as investors. I have my two daughters upstairs, Gen Z, but you would be investors as well. Therefore, engaging with the demographic on the sustainable tourism should be our priority. There is an opportunity to shift the focus of discussions of mitigating negative impacts towards creating positive impacts from tourism, i.e. structuring travel that funds the protections of nature, brain gain, empowering marginalized and indigenous communities, etc. In the end, we need to ensure that greater proportion of sustainable tourism program benefits people, prosperity, and planet will trickle down to local and indigenous communities. Like this eco straw that I'm bringing from the island of Belitung. This is a concrete actions whereby we are replacing plastic-based straw with straw made from grass, and therefore we need to increase also the innovations within the ecotourism sectors. Second, the need to strengthen the community roles as agent of change for tourism transformations. As part of our effort in building a resilient and sustainable tourism sector, we will focus on advancing the recovery of tourism through strengthening the community's roles as agents and also change agents for tourism transformations, including the village tourism. My predecessor, Minister Igade Ardika, once said that tourism was initially identified as an essential driver of economic growth, but the core is humanity. Far too often, we treat tourism as merely business, where capital gain is the top priority. I come from finance and investments, and I learned it by heart that we forgot that it is the collective power by creating jobs. It is jobs, jobs, and jobs for the local communities which will help tourism to be future-proof. Our program of Tourism Village integrates local accommodations, attractions, and complementariness under village governance with local wisdom. This program has proven to elevate the livelihood of villages communities, as it is shown in Panglipuran Tourism Village in Bali, where it generated more than $1.45 million of revenues in 2020 in the midst of pandemic. Last year, we took great pride where Tourism Village Langgaran, a small community in Yogyakarta province, was awarded the UNWTO as the best tourism village in the world. Under Indonesia's G20 presidency, our President Joko Widodo have worked closely with UNWTO to design a comprehensive guideline, pinpointing communities as the rock star of the recovery process. The guidelines for strengthening communities and micro, small, medium enterprise as tourism transformations agents, a people-centered recovery mapped out global collaborations on key agendas of transformative tourism sector, encompassing issues related to developing human capital related to employment, skills, entrepreneurship, and education, enhancing innovations, digitizations, and creative economy. For instance, we are starting the transformations in Bali, whereby the future mobility has been changed to all electrical mobility. I now only be driven in an electric vehicle when I'm in Bali. Women and youth empowerment, climate actions and justice, biodiversity conservation and circular economy, and strengthening policy, governance, and investment frameworks. And finally, to ensure a resilient tourism sector, it is important that the movement of people and travel can contribute to take place safely even during a pandemic. In this context, we need to further discuss on how we can harmonize health protocol standards for cross-border travels. This is one of the key priorities of Indonesia's G20 presidency as part of our effort to strengthen the global health architecture and to better prepare for future pandemic. In this way, we can soften the impact of future pandemic on tourism. Mr. President, before concluding, I'm delighted to inform this meeting that this year, Wonderful Indonesia will host two main global events in tourism and creative economy. First, the World Tourism Day 2022 on Rethinking Tourism to be held on September 27, 2022. And second, the World Conference on Creative Economy to be held in October 2022. Both are in the island of the gods, the Paradise Island of Bali. Furthermore, the Tourism Working Group of the G20 will convene on 10th to 11th May next week in the context of Recover Together, Recover Stronger, and in tourism, Recover Better. This is going to be done in Labuan Bajo. Today's dialogue will surely become a valuable input in our path to build better, more sustainable, and more resilient tourism sector. Tourism is inherently dependent on people-to-people contact. And in times like today, recovery in the tourism sector will be more important than ever to bring people together, create jobs, better quality jobs, and to bring people together between countries, between communities. I thank you.